Let's go now to Swaran Singh. He's a professor of international relations at Jawaharlal Nehru University and joins us from New Delhi. Welcome to the program, Professor. How significant is Donald Trump's pivot to this temporary 10% global tariff? Does it suggest a more structured trade strategy going forward, or is it simply a workaround to the Supreme Court's decision?
Definitely, it's an effort to seek refuge in still persisting the tariffs to be his favorite weapon in dealing with other countries. But Supreme Court ruling has definitely dented his power to bargain with other countries by striking down reciprocal tariffs in this case. Of course, we understand that some other layers of tariffs, which are either sectoral or under other provisions, can continue. But SC ruling also not just undercuts his bargaining power, but also creates confusion as to what happens to various deals that Trump has already signed with European Union, with Japan, with South Korea, and so many other countries, where he's elicited lots of investment promises. Second, also what happens to tariffs already collected. And now there are different companies and countries that are likely to claim a refund of those tariffs. Democrats in United States are already talking about refunds to be ensured. So in that sense, it really undermines the power of President Trump, who had used tariffs as his favorite weapon to deal with other countries. But as I said, he will not easily give up. He's going to try and use other laws, other acts, other provisions, and of course, some other sectoral levies will continue. For example, 100% tariffs that he imposed on electric vehicles from China, or 50% tariffs levied on steel and oil on India and China. So some of those tariffs will continue, but I think fundamentally, in terms of his political image and leverages, a Supreme Court ruling has really undercut his bargaining power, and that shows his desperation in calling justices as disgrace to the nation, as he called them. And in that sense, I think it has really rattled Trump administration, and particularly now when he is next month visiting Beijing, and China was the most significant target of Trump, threatening as much as 145% of tariffs at one stage. I think that will showcase as to how he is going to deal with China, which is world's second largest economy and largest trading partner for United States. And China's exports to United States had fallen in some sectors as much as 20% last year, though Chinese have shifted exports to other countries in Africa, Latin America, Europe, Southeast Asia, and the overall trade of China showed exports growing by 5+% in that sense. But as I said, a lot of confusion still continues that calls for clarifications. But something that is absolutely clear is how the Supreme Court ruling has undercut President Trump's favorite tool of using tariffs against other countries.
More broadly, Professor, do the latest developments reinforce a shift towards economic nationalism in US foreign policy? And how should emerging powers like India recalibrate in response?
Definitely, I think that the trigger of not just nationalism in case of United States, but certain amount of sort of impact of the same narrative in some of the other countries also was seen. And therefore, I think fundamental change in international politics since last year of President Trump using tariffs has been all other countries trying to look for alternatives. And therefore, you can see that India has already signed FTAs with New Zealand, with Australia, with United Arab Emirates, with European Union, with United Kingdom, and so on. So countries are seeking alternatives to how to ensure global stability in terms of trade. And of course, it comes as a good news when India's 18% agreed tariffs have now come down to 10%, plus perhaps 3.5% of most favorite nations tariffs, taking it to about 13.5%. But as I said, lot remains uncertain because on a specific question in his press conference as to what happens to the deal with India, President Trump decided to say nothing has changed and that they will not pay tariffs when exporting to India. and India will continue to pay tariffs when exporting to United States. So lots of confusion and lack of clarity at this stage. But broadly, I think globally and for India, this Supreme Court ruling definitely comes as a big relief.
Okay, Professor Swaran Singh, thank you very much again for joining us on the program.